Hi, I'm Jeff Murrah. I want to welcome you to True Texas History. Today is the birthday of Alexander Watkins Terrell. Now, that's a name that some of you may not be familiar with, but yeah, he's someone that it would be good if we understood more about him. Like for instance, in the state senate here for Texas, there at one point was a life-size portrait of him there, and beneath it was the phrase, "The author of more good laws for Texas than any other man, living or dead." Now, to put that kind of a quote on a life-size portrait, that creates quite an impression. And I'm wondering, with a lot of the legislators we have now, can they even hold a candle to someone like Alexander Watkins Terrell? In all likelihood, well, they're not going to be able to. The man he was originally born in Virginia and came to Texas, studied law and set up his law practice there in Austin, Texas. And he showed himself devoted to Texas, and during the war, he showed war between the states. He showed a lot of leadership, and eventually became a brigadier general. After the war, he believed in his principles enough to go down to Mexico and serve in Maximilian's. Then he came back to Texas, served in various positions of state, was on the Board of Regents for the University of Texas. He was a minister to Turkey. While a minister to Turkey, he knew that the only way to protect Christian missionaries over there in Turkey was to befriend the Sultan and work through the Sultan, which he strove to do. And when he was a legislator here in Texas, he saw to it that many good laws were passed. And we forget about the importance of many of those laws. Like for instance, one of them, some people may consider it archaic. To me, it makes common sense, is make sure that your jurors can read and write. How can you have a juror, someone who is making a decision on whether or not you end up in jail, whether or not you are sentenced to death, and they can't even read or write? That seems like a basic thing and commonsensical, but it took someone like Terrell to go ahead and put it into law. Because, when you can't read or write, it's easy to manipulate people, and they're really not understanding what's going on. And he also passed a lot of laws protecting small farmers and individuals from large corporations. He felt that large corporations and big business was a danger. And in fact, one night, he made a speech and traveled back to Austin, and he was bothered by what he saw. And he said, let me read this to you. "I returned to Austin last night on a late train. The houses of business were all closed, the saloons were open, and many of the young of the city were there. And I resolved that the remaining years of my life should be spent in fighting this nefarious traffic against the manhood and womanhood of Texas." This was somebody who stood up to some of the big interest and negative influences that were going on in Texas. And he fought for both men and women. Now, he's one of those characters that when I did a perusal of the internet, I was amazed. A lot of academics out in California have painted him with a very negative brush. And, when folks at places like Berkeley and the other California universities are lambasting people from Texas, and we don't even know who that person is, that ought to tell you something. This is somebody worth noting, worth paying attention to. And Alexander Terrell is somebody that was admirable, and outsiders viewed him as an anti-person because he was always taking stands against things. But many times we need people like that. Maybe he was an inspiration for Ron Paul, who at one point was known as Dr. No because he was willing to say no to things. And it sounds like Terrell was already willing to take stands against things in his lifetime, long before Ron Paul came along. But when he passed, people made quite a few comments about him. And in fact, one of the things that they said, a great man is a gift in some measure, a revelation of God. A great man living for high ends is the divinest thing that can be seen on earth. The value and interest of history are derived chiefly from the lives and services of the eminent men whom it commemorates. Indeed, without these, there would be no such thing as history, and the progress of a nation would be little worth recording, as the march of a trading caravan across a desert. And that was said concerning Alexander Watkins Terrell. He indeed was considered by his generation a great man, and he's worth knowing more about, as long as you find some good histories that don't lambast him and instead talk about what he accomplished and how he took care of Texans during his time. But I wanted to go ahead and honor him. Happy birthday, Mr. Terrell. Terrell County is named in his honor, and hopefully we'll have more Texans like him in the future. Talk to you later. Till then, vaya con Dios, my friends. Goodbye.